Ten, nine, eight, seven, six, five, four, three, two.
Fair use and content disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by the host do not necessarily reflect that of the Psychological Association of the Philippines and its management. Furthermore, the views and opinions expressed by the guests do not necessarily reflect that of the host, the show, and the organization. Fair use is the copyright regulation that allows the limited use of copyrighted materials without acquiring permission from the right holders for comment and educational purposes. Views, articles, and images on this episode may contain copyrighted material which has not always been specifically authorized by the copyright owner.
This is being broadcasted to the Teaching Psychology Special Interest Group's social media platforms, when available. If you have any questions for our guests, simply comment on this video and we will try to accommodate all your inquiries. Note that after this broadcast, we may no longer be able to answer your questions. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Live from the Philippines, Dr. Ver Reyes and Professor Moniq Muyargas, Chairperson and Co-chairperson of the Teaching Psychology SIG.
Magandang hapon.
Afternoon. Kamusta naman, Moniq?
Kamusta? I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Oo, iba na yung background ko ulit.
I love it.
We came in full circle. Oo.
And true. You started off with the first episode, first webisode, yung pilot webisode natin. And we're closing it today, di ba? So that's a good thing.
Oo, and we're back in our original look. Para lang wala lang. Gusto ko lang malaman kung ano na yung natin, yung episode natin. Sige, maraming salamat. Good afternoon, everyone who's joining us right now from all over the country and all over the world. Ayan.
Oh.
May mga ganyan na ngayon tayo. So, good afternoon. Sa ating mga avid viewers, ayan si Cashew Serendipity. Good afternoon daw. Of course, sabi ni Jikan, always watching and learning from you gifted people from Cebu City. Oh, in fairness.
Thank you. Gifted na gifted.
And I think all teachers naman are gift to, to humanity. Ayan, so good afternoon kay Maylene Garcia. Sana sinasabi nyo rin kung taga saan kayo para ma-shout out. Ayan, si Rack General, our favorite,
yes,
avid viewer din. So good afternoon kay Florence. Kay Florence, hindi ko na alam kung paano na naman to basahin.
Hello, Florence. Ayan. And from Iloilo, we have from Digle, Iloilo. It's pretty interesting, no? A lot of our DepEd teachers are also watching us. Thank you very much.
Yan. And also from Baliwag, Bulacan, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. From the University of Luzon, Dagupan City in Pangasinan. Hello po sa inyo.
Hello.
Meron din tayo from Lanao del Norte. Hello po, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Syempre from our YouTube channel, we also have the Vivica Avelino. Good afternoon po. At maayong hapon watching from, in fairness, from National Bonghua University in Taiwan. Ayan, magandang
Hello, Sir Donnie. How are you? Come home soon. I miss you.
Ayan. Meron din tayo from our former president. Ayan, si Dr. Marge Odarbe. Hello, Moniq Gifts to Humanity. Yes.
Na-stress ako tuloy. Nanonood si Doc Marge. I'm scared now.
Hindi, don't be pressured. I'm sure that our viewers for this afternoon are very much excited. Ano ba tong pag-uusapan nating OBE? Favorite mo dito. Favorite mo rin naman.
Favorite ko lahat. I love it.
Bakit mo ba favorite tong OBE na to, Moniq?
Bakit? Kasi it makes the craft of teaching an art. And it makes it more meaningful for students and as teachers as well.
Yeah. Pero of course, scientific din naman to, no? Based on
definitely, yes.
Baka sabihin kasi nila, arte lang tayo ng OBE. So, meron naman talaga siyang basis. And this is what the commission, I think, also advocates for, no? Tong OBE na to. And later on, we'll talk more about that. But before we go there, been wanting to watch daw, sabi niya, been wanting to watch this series, sa wakas na timingan
din. Ayan.
So hello,
thank you, Jason,
from the University of the East in Caloocan. Meron din from LSPU in Santa Cruz, Laguna. Ano ba yung LSPU? Lasal, charot. I mean, message mo ano yung LSPU para din alam ng mga tao.
Yeah. It's also a way to promote your school or institution.
In Santa Cruz, Laguna. Ayan. Maraming salamat, Willie. So, this afternoon, medyo iba yung format natin. Hindi naman iba yung format natin, pero wala tayong guest for this afternoon. Wala tayong guest this afternoon.
Wala ka ng choice. Wala
akong choice. We come in full circle.
Yes.
We started with, again, yung nabanggit ko kanina, no? What ba is online teaching? What is distance education? What is remote learning? Parang ganyan. And then now, we end it also with you as our, expert. We go to you now to share to our viewers, no? Ano ba tong OBE na to? Ayan. So sabi ni Kenneth, I'm interested to learn how to teach psychology the OBE way. Bongga. Ayun, okay. Eto na. Si Laguna State Polytechnic
University. Ayan. Welcome po.
In Santa Cruz, Laguna. So again, just to remind everyone, we won't be issuing any certificates for all our webisodes. We are being streamed live on Facebook and also on our YouTube account. If you would like to visit our YouTube, you can simply type in PAP Teaching and perhaps it will pop in there. Pero our official channel is Teaching Psychology SIG TV. You may also email us and get in touch with us through our email account at teachpsych.pap.sig@gmail.com, and of course on our other social media accounts on Twitter and on Instagram at teachpsych.pap. Ayan. And we also visit the official website of the Psychological Association of the Philippines at pap.ph.
Yes, that's a new website, just in case some of you didn't get the email, but yes, we have a new PAP website, pap.ph.
Dati kasi pap.org.ph, pap.ph na lang siya. And then you can get all information about the organization. You can also visit the Psychological Association of the Philippines official Facebook page, where you can get all the notifications and activities that the organization has been doing. Okay, puntahan muna natin before pa tayo mag-go straight to your si Jar Kael is watching from Tawi-Tawi. Hello!
Yeah. Hello!
Mula Apari hanggang Tawi-Tawi.
Tawi-Tawi.
Hindi lang hanggang hulo. Okay. Hello from Olivares college in Parañaque po, I teach psych subjects. Ayan. Marami na tayong mga psych teachers. I think yung maganda din, no, with the Teaching Psychology Special Interest Group is that we cater to many of our members in the Psychological Association of the Philippines, primarily because marami tayong mga psychology teachers, academicians, no, who are working at in the school level or in an educational setting. You may also visit the other divisions. Moniq, ano nga ba yung iba pa nating mga divisions in the Psychological Association of the Philippines?
Pagagalitan ako ni Doc Marge nito. Okay.
Yung at least naaalala mo lang.
Yung divisions. We have, of course, the clinical division. May counseling division. Tama ba? Yes. Of course, there's social psych division. And then we have educational psychology division. Assessment division. Ano pa ba? May nakalimutan ako.
May nakalimutan pa ba tayo? O, sabihin nyo sa comment below kung may nakalimutan kami. No? So, how about meron din tayong tinatawag na special interest groups, no? Where the teaching psychology is part of. No? Ano ba tong mga teaching, ano ba tong mga SIGs na to, if you remember? We started out, parang 4 lang nung una eh.
True, yeah.
So that's teaching, and then we also have
LGBT Psych.
Okay, LGBT Psychology Special Interest Group.
Ayan, may Sports and Exercise Psychology Special Interest Group. What's the more recent? Positive Psych. Meron na nga din ngayong Positive Psych. And of course, yung kapartner natin before, Research in Psychology, a more recent one. Ay, sorry, Doc Marge. IO Division pala. Yeah.
Yun. At meron din tayong Developmental Psychology Division.
Yeah, Developmental Psychology. Yes.
So, bago din natin makalimutan, meron din tayong MHPSS or the Mental Health Psychosocial Support Group.
Yes.
Meron din tayong ano ba to? Yung
public service ata?
Yes. For those who are working in the government. Meron pa ba tayong Environmental Psychology Special Interest Group?
Yes.
Meron din tayo. Meron din tayong yung super SIG natin, yung Substance Use Prevention.
Yes.
Yan. Meron
I'm bad with acronyms.
Meron din tayo niyan. Meron din tayong, I think may bagong SIG for persons with disability. So, meron din tayo niyan. So, ang daming ino-offer ng Psychological Association of the Philippines.
Yes.
Sayang, no, na-miss natin yung opportunity to have our convention this year. This would have been a good time, a good opportunity to also meet the other groups, no, and other divisions as well. Ayun, ano ba yung PP? Doc March, ano ba yung PP in public service? SIG in public service. Ano yung PP? Persons? Public partnership, ganyan, in the public service. Then, meron tayo niyan, in the public service, sila yung, kadalasan yung mga, yun nga, working for, in the public sector. No, that are not necessarily covered ng ating, let's say, teachers, in the government. So, ito yung mga psychologists who are working, let's say, in the military, no, or in other mental health institutions or geared towards mental health advocacies. Ayan. So, meron din tayo niyan. Uy, si
Doc Ming! Hello, Doc Ming!
Yan, from the Silliman University in Dumaguete. Holiday nga pala ngayon. So, maraming salamat sa pag-join ninyo sa amin for spending time with us this afternoon. Alam namin you all are very busy trying to prepare your materials, and hopefully yung webisode natin for this afternoon would be an additional help, no, in trying to understand ba. Kasi minsan naririnig natin, di ba, Moniq, pag sinasabi natin dalawa na, you go back to your learning outcomes. Ayun, psychology practitioners in public service.
Yun.
Yan. Thank you, Doc Marge. Maraming
salamat.
So, yun. sana wala na tayong na-miss out i-promote ng mga divisions at
Mhm.
SIGs. Pero meron din, aside from those SIGs and divisions wherein people can join, no? Meron din tayong mga regional chapters, Monique. Alam mo ba yun?
Yeah, I think so. Ano ba yon? Fair.
So, binalik mo sa akin na on the spot ako. So, ang alam ko na ay, baka magalit sa akin yung iba, pero just in case I don't know the others, I think meron in Central Luzon na chapter. Meron din Calabarzon and Mimaropa. Meron din tayo muna, Monique. Ayan. Minsan naghahang talaga tayo, no, kapag overloaded tayo ng information.
Yes.
I think there is a Davao chapter, if I'm not mistaken. Doc Marge, pa-correct na lang, Pero, yun,
extended ang dominations. Ayan.
teka lang, wala naman sa comments yon. Mamaya na lang.
Nashock ako. Thank you. Gusto ko talagang
So marami tayong areas. Yun, mas localized naman yung mga regional chapters, no? So sundan nyo lang din yung kanilang mga pages. I think may mga links naman yata or in email. Oo, so you can get in touch with them for more information. There is a Psychological Association of Cagayan. May Bicol chapter. Yan. Sabi ni Doc Marge, may Bicol chapter, may Northern Luzon, at may Davao region. Ayan.
So we're really growing. We're growing.
That's right. And hopefully, may international din ba tayo? International chapters. I think meron. In Dubai, I think, or baka may ihiwalay tayong na regional chapter for that. No? So maraming salamat. I think what the world needs right now is more mental health advocates, more mental health practitioners. Kasi alam naman natin that mental health is very, very important, not just physical health. No? Pag sinabi natin we want to have a very productive, healthy society, mahalaga na inaalagaan din natin yung ating mental health para dyan. Okay, ang dami ko nang sinabi. Meron ka sabihin.
Wala na kasi nasi-stress na ako. Ang pressure.
Bakit ka naman nasi-stress?
Kasi it's our last webisode. Baka may magsipangks ako sa iyo. Alam mo naman. Mamimiss kita.
Ako, hindi ka mawawala. Hindi ako mawawala. Nandito pa rin tayo. Sige. So, ayun, may UAE chapter.
Yan. UAE chapter. Thank you, Doc Marge.
So, ang dami-daming alam ni Doc Marge na hindi natin alam. Pero maraming salamat for coaching. As yan ang tinatawag nating tagasalo.
Yes.
Saluhan talaga tayo. Ngayong panahon na to ng pandemya, ngayong panahon na to, kailangan natin ng isa't isa. Okay. Yes. So, ano ba tong OBE na to?
Yeah.
Monique.
Okay. So, I guess this afternoon's webisode is a good culmination for what we've gone through for the past webisodes. Kasi this is how you're going to package your teaching materials and your teaching strategies come first semester or the entire academic year. So it's about time that we need to plan very carefully how we are going to deliver our lessons so that our lessons will be as effective and it will generate the expected outcomes from the students, no? Not only as yung mga requirements, but yung skills and yung kanilang understanding and kanilang competencies, no? As graduates of psychology. So I think this is a good way to synthesize, I guess, the past webisodes that we've had since June, tama ba? Season 1 and Season 2.
Yes, June. Yeah. Yes, oo. At ano din siguro, maganda din to na pag-usapan because a lot of psychology teachers are not education majors naman, no? Particularly in the higher education. For example, ako never akong nag-take ng LET, never akong nag-edoc major. Although I had units in educational psychology, pero hindi yon same of how we can teach, no? So, a lot of us, a lot of psychology teachers, parang nagtuturo because we're practicing. Pero ito kasi yung parang pinaka-basic natin. We're going back to the basics. Ano ba yung pag sinasabi natin curriculum, writing, ganyan, yung mga important na at least working knowledge no, na meron tayo. So sige, I think our PowerPoint, your presentation is ready.
Yes.
So take it away.
Thank you, Madam Bear. So this afternoon, we're gonna take it up a notch, I guess, in how we are going to make sure that our courses are being taught well and effectively, so that our students will get the most out of the learning experience. No, so in the next slide, I would like to rehash, no, or remind everyone na we need to really change the way we think about the educational topography, I guess, because sometimes nakakalimutan natin that we're just there, we give them the syllabus, we give them a copy of the syllabus, or we write the syllabus, but and we transmit the information or the knowledge to our students. But the question is it effective? Are we really making sure that our the way we teach and the way we teach our lessons or the learning experience is transformative? Transformative meaning nakukuha ba ng estudyante yung kailangan niya makuhang skills, competencies by the time he or she graduates or completes the degree, no? So there makikita natin yung change, no, na kailangan natin gawin. If not na nagawa nyo na, no, just as a reminder that iba na ngayon ang pagtingin, no, or ang pag-manage ng teaching or pedagogical strategies, because it's more learner-centered, it becomes more practice-oriented of learning. Hindi na tayo nag-focus on accumulating knowledge, but making sure that the knowledge is meaningful to the student. And noon kasi yung rote learning or rote teaching, for that matter, is more siya on low-level cognitive learning, but now it's more of higher-order thinking skills. That's what we require our students to be able to analyze, to be able to think critically about the concepts and constructs, and even to the highest degree do research, no? So in the next slide, just to remind everyone, no, na the CMO number 46, 2012 reminds us that there is a mandate or an obligation, no, to make sure that our educational system is quality assured, meaning we are setting a good standard, no, at par with that of the rest of the world. And the goal is there to, of course, to achieve excellence in education. And the stakeholders are expected to get this quality education, no, that involves our students, those who are part of the educational institutions. In the next slide, we are also being reminded, no, because of this, tatanungin natin ang ating sarili as teachers or as members of the educational institution, or administrators for that matter. What are the competencies of your graduate? Ano ba yung ini-expect nyo upon completing that particular degree? In this case, a BA in psychology or BS in psychology. Ano ba ang kailangan natin sa kanila makita, no, after they're done? If they receive their diploma and completed that degree, what do you expect of them, no? So we na-encapsulate dapat lahat yung quality, skills, and understanding that a student needs to develop in that 4-year lifespan niya sa inyong university or inyong college. And why is this important to us? Because you want graduates to be highly contributory to the society, no, and be able to be effective teachers, be good public servants, no. So these are I'm sure your schools have their own tinatawag na values or mission vision na tinatawag, no. So it's more or less anchored on that particular paradigm. In the next slide, the SHED explains that outcomes-based education is an approach that focuses and organizes the educational system around on what is essential for your student to know, value, and be able to achieve at a desired level of competence. So, ini-expect ng Commission on Higher Education that your graduates would have accumulated what we call the desired results or expected outcomes that have been determined by your institution or your program, and naka-embed doon yung strategies, processes, techniques, and means which are put into place by your institution, particularly in your department, because naka-specify yan sa inyong program, na these are the things that a psychology graduate need to have upon completing the degree, no? So in essence, it is like parang working backwards with students as the center of the learning teaching environment. So you start from what you want to be or what you want the student to be, and then work from there, no? In creating those outcomes. So in the next slide, we ask ourselves, no, what is the big deal about an outcome? We ask ourselves, what are the competencies a student should achieve by the end of a psychology course? For example, whether it's in IO psychology, Gen Psych, TOP, Dev Psych, or whatnot, no? And we're thinking about focusing and organizing everything in that particular education system around what is essential for all students to be able to do successfully at the end of their learning experience. So here we can see that an outcome is a culmination of the learning process. So hindi lang siya in terms of upon graduation, but upon every after completing a particular course, whether you're teaching psychological statistics, whether you're teaching theories of personality, each course would have its expected outcomes, no? And you have to bear in mind while you are designing the course that you are envisioning that this student will be a graduate of this particular program. So we should never forget that. Sometimes you get so stuck with thinking about what's the content of the textbook or anong kailangan na mga specifications, no, that the student needs to learn. But we sometimes forget that at the end of the day, what will the students become out of this course? Okay.
Before we go, i-contextualize lang natin. So kunwari, ano ba yung, kunwari, let's go to Gen Psych. Yan yung pinaka, so ang tanong lagi, ano yung guiding na question mo kung outcome yung pag-uusapan? So sabi mo, what are the competencies a student should achieve by the end of Gen Psych?
Can
you give an example siguro?
So, if you envision a student to be able to complete the course, kailangan ng estudyante in a who've enrolled himself or herself sa isang Gen Psych na course, upon completing it, should be able to explain psychological concepts.
Okay.
So should be able to compare and contrast, evaluate the perspectives of psychology. Yon. So very
culminating demonstration of learning.
Yes.
Kaya ang pagkakasulat kadalasan ng learning outcome ay at the end of the semester, the student should be able to. So yun yung culminating demonstration of learning. So tandaan natin, teachers, demonstration of learning.
Yes.
Sige.
Later, we're gonna give you a lot of examples of what you can use, no, in crafting your learning outcomes. We don't actually call them now course objectives kasi noon sinasabi course objectives, di ba? Or subject objectives. Now it's more what you say, politically correct in a sense when you say learning objectives or learning outcomes. Kasi yun naman talaga ang gusto nating ma-achieve, no? What does a student need to learn at the end of the course?
And not, kumbaga din, may paradigm shift din yun, no? May pagpo-position din siya na at the end of the SEM, hindi natin sinasabi na ito yung ituturo nung subject. Diba? Parang ganun yung pagkakasabi.
Usually, yung perspective ng teacher lagi. Now, when it's OBE, kailangan sa perspective ng estudyante. Kung
That's
ikaw ay mag-enroll sa subject nito, by the time na matapos yung course na to, dapat meron ka ng ganito.
Oh,
Ayan,
yan.
dapat.
Okay, sige. I think mas magiging klaro yon in your next slide.
Yes. Okay. So in my next slide, here's an example of how we are now trying to shift our teaching learning paradigm. No, as you can see there, before pag instruction or input based, nasabi ko sa inyo earlier, I mentioned earlier that the teaching learning structures are often in the context of meron siyang 1 hour, 1.5 hours of lecture, ano yung coverage ng material or coverage ng course, and ilang units ang makiklaim ng estudyante upon completing the course. But now, if you think about it, if shifted to learning outcomes or outcome-based na learning, makikita natin that learning is you're focusing now on the learning environment rather than the number of hours, or you're focusing now on the specific learning results rather than the number of concepts na ma-memorize niya in that semester or in that term. And if you look at the mission or end purposes of teaching and learning, makikita natin na hindi na siya from transfer of knowledge from the instructor, but eto na ang tinatawag na student discovery towards construction of knowledge. Kasi at the end of the day, we want our students to also be producing knowledge and not just recipients of knowledge, no? And I think it's more important as well, no, to look at yung criteria of success natin in terms of shifting from the teaching instruction input-based to learning outcome-based. Kasi before, iniisip natin quantity and quality of resources. But ngayon, we should bear in mind, no, that when we try to design our courses, we need to look at quality and quantity of outcomes. Kasi given na yan na meron yung resources, it's a matter of how these resources will be able to translate into outcomes for students, no? And outcomes being skills, competencies, and understanding of the course. Ayan.
So siguro, for example, yung learning varies yung resources. Kunwari, contextualize natin, Moniq. So meron tayong mga binigay na resources in our previous webisodes.
Yes.
However, yun yung instruction part.
Yes.
Diba? Pero yung learning, kahit gaano kaganda yung LMS mo, for example,
Exactly.
kahit gaano kaganda yung libro mo,
or kahit ano kaganda ang iyong video lecture, ayan.
Kung hindi nagpo-produce ng specific outcome dun sa students, wala din yun. It doesn't, hindi ibig sabihin na may natutunan yung bata. I think yun yung magandang shinare sa atin last time, no, ni Miss Pat, no?
Yes.
Ang sabi niya, ito, more on teaching. Pero it doesn't mean, di ba dun daw sa comic strip, it doesn't mean na natuto talaga yung
exactly.
So, there's a shift dapat in terms of nagtuturo ka lang as compared to facilitating knowledge.
Yes.
I think yun yung key term dapat na tinitignan natin, especially now, no? Na a lot of teachers also don't have access to internet and devices. There are so many, there are tons of resources. As we've seen, no? Parang ang ganyan, ang daming mga ideas ng ating mga guests in our previous episodes. Pero at the end of the day, yung
babalikan mo talaga yung outcome mo. Kasi yun nga, paatras tayo. Identify mo muna kung anong gusto mong skill that the student want to achieve. And then from there, how will I be able to facilitate the learning of that student para ma-learn niya yung ganong mga skills at the end of my course or during the course.
Tapos na yung era na, ako ay magtuturo.
Yes.
Kasi hindi ako nagturo, walang matututunan ng student.
Yes.
Kaya yung pa nasi-stress. Paano nila i-video yung sarili nila?
True,
no?
true.
Because we have this thinking na dapat manggaling sa akin, no? Yung resources, manggaling sa akin, yung matututunan ng bata. When in fact, in an outcomes-based education, that is not necessarily true. No? Ang student, yun nga sabi dito, mission and purposes. Students have the opportunity to discover no, towards the construction of knowledge.
Yes.
No, hindi lang siya transfer. Okay, sige. Sige.
Okay.
So,
So, next slide.
may mga questions yung ating
Yeah,
mga
yeah.
viewers, no? Comment nyo lang and then we'll try to answer them later on. Okay.
And if you notice, if you look at yung mga accreditation agencies, they actually assess the quality of education not anymore in the number of enrollees, kasi before yun yung pinaka-gauge natin. But now they're looking at the quality of graduates, no? So that's why may ginagawang mga tracer studies ng ating mga graduates, saan silang industries na belong or saan silang field na employ, no? How many of your graduates actually are translating their what they learned into their own fields, no? Into their respective professions. So yun yung mga measures ngayon, hindi na yung number of or the quantity of students.
Oo. Kasi kunwari kung i-contextualize natin, kung psychology graduate ako,
yes,
pero I don't work in an industry or a psych-related organization, medyo iba yon. Kasi ibig sabihin, okay, nag-aral ako, pero hindi ko naman nagagamit yung natututunan ko in real life. No? So, siguro tinitignan din, especially now, yung passing rate. Kaya medyo mataas yung diba? Medyo mataas yung pressure for some schools to perform in the psychometrician examination, in the psychologist board examination. Kasi, however, ako, ewan ko sa akin personally, hindi naman siguro magagalit ang PRC sa akin ito. Pero, psychology kasi is a very diverse field, no? So, yung craft ng law, for example, in psychometrics and in psychology, is more really for practitioners.
Yes.
No? So if you're doing all these psych-related activities such as administering tests, ganyan, it may fall into or it falls under the psychometrics like for exam. Pero if I'm dealing, hindi naman ako nagbibigay ng, for example, ng test, pero nagdi-research ako. Which is also a learning outcome in psychology. Part din yun, no? Ng matututunan. So, hindi sa lahat ng oras, pag board exam lang, ang basihan natin. That's my no? Kasi very diverse yung field. Yung very diverse yung field natin. Sige.
Okay. So, here in this particular slide, we're trying to delineate, no? What's the difference between a course outcome and a learning outcome? Always sinasabi nating learning outcome. Pero, we need to differentiate na ang course outcomes are what they actually need to learn or to demonstrate at the end of the course. Pero yung learning outcomes may result from a specific lesson. So if, like, for example, if you're teaching, let's say, for example, abnormal psychology, and you're teaching, for example, let's say, diagnosis, for example, or how you be able to determine a particular disorder, that is a learning outcome. So specific siya per unit or section ng inyong lesson or inyong course, no? So, if you notice in the triangle, naka-nest yung iyong course outcomes from your psychology learning outcomes. Meaning, siya yung actually bumubuhat ng buong course. It's scaffolded by these learning outcomes, yung course outcomes, which of course, again, it supports the entire program of psychology. So, at the end of the day, your program will not be as successful or as effective or as what do you call this? Parang hindi siya at the forefront if hindi nasa-satisfy. Makikita mo naman kasi per course, hindi mo siya makikita na tinuturo mo lang siya, pero yung skill ng bata for that particular course or ng estudyante ay hindi nata-translate, no? At the end of the course. Basically, nag-complete lang siya ng grade para makapasa lang, no? Pero in essence, dapat, if you look at outcomes-based, mami-measure mo talaga specifically what are the elements of the course or specific parts of the course based on the skills and competencies that the students have. No? In the next slide, we are looking at the entire framework framework of the OBE, no? Here you will notice na hindi siya stand-alone yung course design mo, no? A lot of us now are preparing our lessons, are preparing our courses, no, come first semester. And we have to bear in mind na you don't work in isolation, meaning your course design is not a stand-alone element or variable in the educational institution. Dapat take into consideration the interplay of a lot of things, like how you're going to evaluate the aspects of your course, what are your teaching and learning systems, ano yung learning environment na kinikreate mo, whether it's face-to-face or online. And it takes into consideration as well, no, yung ano ba talaga ang VMG or vision, mission, and goals ng inyong institution. Kasi every institution is unique. It has a unique culture, it has a unique environment, and based on that environment is the kind of products, no, or kind of graduates that they will produce at the end of the academic year. Ayun. And in the next slide, we can see here where are you at, no, in this entire process. So if you look at the green, the red or the maroon circles, that's where you should be at this point, no? Because hindi mo naman makokontrol nandiyan na yung vision, mission ng school mo. Merong quality assurance standards, hindi mo na yan ma-change, no? Yung curriculum mapping is already dictated upon by the administration or CHED or PRC. Pero yung meron kang control is redefining your course outcomes and reconfiguring your learning environments, which will generate these learning outcomes. So excellent instruction is based on decision making. You have to decide as a teacher how to respond and to engage with your students. What are the requirements? Are these requirements ba necessary to get to the competencies that the students will need to have at the end of the course, no? So you're practically, as a teacher, trying to organize what you teach, how you teach, so that you can make your students achieve these learning outcomes or skills. Okay? So in the next slide,
before we go there,
yeah.
Moniq, kunwari, bigyan natin sila ng example.
Mm-hmm.
So, kunwari, in your school, the University of the Philippines. So, kunwari, I don't know if, pinuput talaga kita on the spot. No? Kunwari, your school's vision, mission, and goals. Kunwari, very general. Ano ba yung vision, mission, and goal ng UP, for example, or at least in your case?
Pinut mo talaga ako sa spot, ano? Pero in essence, no, one of the important features of I guess UP is to instill nationalism and social justice consciousness. So when I try to craft design my syllabus in a psychology subject, kailangan naka-nestled doon, conscious sa akin na yun yung goal ng school ko, no? So that the students will be able to be what do you call this? Na parang conscious sila, aware sila of societal issues, to be able to have a love for country, have a love for the Philippines, yon, nationalism. So respect for the country. So in essence, kahit sa psychology, pwede mo siya matuturo, no? Example, one of the perfect examples would be in Filipino psychology or in any psychology course. Kailangan mo talagang i-indigenize yan. Tama ba? Magagalit si Sir J pag hindi mo nalagyan ng Filipino psychology, ang abnormal psychology, or ang pagtuturo ng IO, kailangan talaga, you have to make conscious what is a Filipino worker. Diba? Mm-hmm. So, kailangan mo siyang i-weave into your lessons, ang ganitong mga elements, so that, and then your activities, particularly, should generate or should get out of the students the kind of skills and the kind of, what do you call this, understanding and appreciation for that particular lesson or particular course.
Sige. So, sa UP, di ba meron kayo parang excellence and...
Honor and excellence.
Honor and excellence. So, kunwari, ganun yung vision, mission. Honor and excellence. Ganyan. Yun yung tagline. We go now to quality assurance and standards of the field. So sabi mo, usually set yan by different agencies. It could be, let's say, meron ba kayo, kasi si UP, hindi naman masyado nagpapa-accredit. So narin, mga pa-ASCO, Alcocoa, ganyan pasok.
Sa inyong school, di ba? Ganon? Meron kayong accreditation. It's very important.
So, aside from the CHED recognition and accreditation, meron ka ding mga external agencies or private ba siya? Pero kasi sa amin, sa local government, ang tawag sa kanya ALCU, Association of Local Colleges and Universities. No? So, yung mga ganon. So, may sarili din siya. So, yun yung sinasabi ni Moniq na quality assurance standards, no, na tinitignan. And then, yung curriculum map could be dictated, sabi mo nga, by PRC and CHED. So, for example, if you look at CMO 34 ba yun, 2017, may recommended curriculum mapping.
Yes.
Yun yung, anong webisode yun, Moniq, yung merong L, may P, at saka may O. Yan. Tapos may mga different subjects. Tapos ano yung pagkaka-arrange sa kanya. No? So, hindi kasi pwedeng, pag pumasok yung student, o bigay mo kagad kung anong gusto niya, di ba? Kailangan introduction to psychology, statistics, blah, blah, blah. Kasi yun yung magbi-build upon. Hindi siya pwedeng thesis writing agad.
Yes.
Dahil hindi niya naiintindihan yung basic concept.
Tsaka, what is good about the OBE framework is it takes into consideration yung spiral DNA or helical kind of learning na each course, kasi that's why it's very important yung curriculum mapping, no? Na we have to make sure that each course builds on the previous course. So, that's why may prereq, di ba? That's why kailangan mo i-take muna yung ganitong course so that by the time you reach the next course, you have enough skills and competencies to understand, to explain, to experiment, to examine, to apply all the necessary things that you need to do for that particular course, no? So, that's why huli yung, hindi pwedeng mag-start ka sa, thoughtful din kasi kailangan yung pag-plan ng inyong, not only that, ng deliberate yung iyong planning ng iyong curriculum, yung study plan po, yun baka ma-confuse ang ating mga teachers. Yung if you have a study plan of your program, makikita mo that each course builds on the previous course until it commences or it completes itself sa thesis writing or even sa practicum, no, yung mga higher. Hindi mo naman pwede first year practicum agad kasi alam natin na wala pa siyang skill of na kailangan i-build on from previous courses or earlier courses.
That's right. Kaya nga sabi ni Miss Pat at saka ni Sir Ryan last time, di ba, pressure yung intro to psych. Kasi aside from it can be a make or break na aalis yung faculty, yung student dahil dun sa faculty, ito kasi yung pinaka-foundation nila. So, ang kunwari, pagdating mo na sasabihin, hindi nyo ba ito natutunan?
Always sinasabi yan, di ba?
Yeah.
So there's a certain level of expectation because yun nga, every course is expected to have these set of competencies by the time you're finished with them or you're done with it. So that ready ka na, prepared ka na for the next slated set of courses.
That's right.
So in the next slide, this is how we are going to look at how we're going to craft our teaching and learning dynamic, no? Balikan natin talaga kung ano yung program outcomes natin. I'm sure every department, every psychology department in every institution or college or university would have its own academic program outcomes. And from there, when you build your course or when you create your syllabus or you plan your courses, kailangan nasa consciousness mo ano talaga ang ini-expect ng inyong program. Kasi hindi naman pwedeng ikaw lang, no? Or ang textbook lang. Because at the end of the day, always your course contributes to the kind of graduate that particular program produces. Yan. So each academic degree program has a focus, and this is what program outcomes describe. So they describe what the graduate of that program can know, can do, and can become. No? So these programs, program outcomes can be broken into specific components or competencies. And this is what we call performance indicators. No? Na usually makikita yan sa assessment part ng inyong planning of your courses. Okay? Or designing of your courses. In the next slide, tanungin naman natin, ano ba ang itsura ng isang learning outcome, no? Sabi kanina ni Vera, no, na learning outcomes should bear in mind that the students are the ones who are going to receive the kind of benefits, no, from that course. So, simple learning outcomes contain 3 very important elements. Who is to perform? Check na yan. Alam natin, dapat ang student. So, by the end of the course, the student will be able to blank, which is number 2. What action they are to take. And then the third element is the particular result that must come from that particular action. No? So, dito makikita natin na obvious na yung hint, no? Yung obvious na yung very apparent na yung expectation of what a learning outcome should be. It must be observable. So, verb yung ginagamit natin dito. Hindi pwede belief, hindi pwede value, hindi pwede psychological state of mind or attitude. Hindi pwedeng, by the end of the course, the student should be able to be happy or sad. Hindi pwede ganon, no? It has to be an action verb like describe, explain, design, produce, rather than the vague or hidden or non-demonstrative processes like know, understand, or believe, think. Diba? Masyadong vague yung mga ganong words, no?
So, hindi pwede yung at the end of the course, at the end of at the end of the course, the student, number 1 is okay, the student who is to perform, tapos what actions is to understand.
No, hindi pwede. Hindi pwede. Kasi bakit ganon? Bakit ganon? Dapat i-avoid natin yung mga words na ganyan. Because ang hirap nilang i-measure. Assessment is key also because nakaakibat or partner ng learning outcome yung iyong measuring rubric or your tool, no, or assessment tool for that particular learning outcome. So what OBE teaches us is that we're very clear with the direction that we're going to take and how we are going to go forward towards that direction. So in a sense, if you look at every learning activity, kailangan meron siyang assessment tool, no? So hindi pwedeng okay, magpapa-quiz lang ako kasi feel ko lang, no? There has to be a purpose why you're doing that. Is that part of your learning outcome? Is that measuring your learning outcome? Is the quiz or is the formative assessment or the summative assessment or is that role-playing project of your student measuring the learning outcome that you have set for that particular lesson or for that particular course, no? So,
so pag sinabi mong the student is to understand learning theories, ang tanong doon, how do you know that the student
understands? Yes.
Or to learn lang, sinabi mo to learn.
to learn psychological concepts. To learn learning.
Ang tanong, paano mo ngayon nalaman or paano mo ngayon na-measure ano yung performance indicator na natuto nga yung bata na may learning o na-understand niya. Okay. So, yun yung sinasabi.
In our next slide, we're gonna show them examples of what these are, no? There's a link down there. You can access that link to give you more examples of how can these be stated, no? So, usually the statement of a learning outcome would go like, at the end of the course, the student will be able to define attitude or describe stigma or outline the process of classical conditioning or state, the perspectives of psychology. Ayon. So, those are examples. And these are demonstrating or demonstrative verbs that are measurable. In the next slides, we also have more examples, no? Ito na yung medyo higher level of learning, which is compare and contrast, or discuss, evaluate, examine, okay? So without those verbs, what are called outcome statements, they lack a clear, defined demonstration process. If you say, students should be able to understand, hindi mo kasi siya ma-measure. Pero pag sinabi mo siyang evaluate, evaluating is making an appraisal by weighing the strengths and limitations of a particular, let's say, theory. Okay? So, we all, for example, we all love Freud, or we all love the psychodynamic perspective. But if I ask a student, I would like you to evaluate the psychodynamic perspective in the context of, let's say, abnormal behavior. So, makikita mo kung saan mo siya talaga i-measure, no? And paano. Because clear na kapag sinabi mong evaluate, meron siyang strengths and limitations na dapat i-mention or dapat isasabihin sa kanyang output. Whether it's an essay, a reflection paper, an examination, or whatnot, no? So, yon. In the next slide, there are more examples, no? I placed there yung lots and HOTS. I don't know if ating mga teachers are familiar. You're familiar with the HOTS, right? Higher order thinking skills. Pero meron din tayong LOTS, lower order thinking skills. Ito yung medyo hindi masyadong malalim ang ang learning depth, no, or ang learning quality. So ini-encourage natin that usually these kinds of words are particularly at the beginning of usually yung mga introductory part ng course, no? And as the course progresses through the lessons, dapat nag-move forward na siya pataas sa higher order thinking skills. And yes, it is derived, and the Bloom's taxonomy is actually a very good guide, no, for our teachers to use. But again, be able to distinguish kung ano yung lots sa HOTS, kasi hindi naman pwede na lahat ng ating learning outcomes ay lower order thinking skills, because hindi yan the kind of graduate, I assume, that your program wants, no? You want a student who is be able to analyze, will be able to synthesize, will be able to apply, will be able to evaluate in the field of psychology or whatever profession they're in, no? So, in the
siguro,
yes.
Moniq, hindi naman din masama yung lots.
Yeah, hindi naman masama. That's why I said usually at the beginning of introductory part of the course.
Correct. Baka
hindi pwedeng lots lahat.
Oo, puro HOTS lahat. Tipong judge agad, appraise agad.
Hindi pwede.
Pwede naman po magkaroon ng define muna. Kunwari, introduction to psychology. So, pwede ka naman muna dun sa define. Kasi kung hindi naman na ma-define, paano rin niya ma-appraise? Paano rin niya ma-evaluate? Diba? Or, pero hindi naman pwedeng puro lahat lots lang. Kasi kung ganun lang kababaw, ibig sabihin, pagdating mo ng research in psychology, puro define lang yung ginagawa.
Yes.
Hindi mo ine-evaluate yung binasa mo, no? Hindi mo nire-revise kung ano yung perhaps contribution of a theoretical framework. So, hindi sinasabi ni Moniq na laging hot sa pwede ring lots.
That's why it's ladderized, kasi kailangan mo mag-umpisa sa baba. No, I think if correct me if I'm wrong, sa mga educational psychologists natin, Vygotsky forwarded this principle of scaffolding. No? So kailangan i-build mo siya from the most fundamental and then have it evolve or develop into the higher level thinking skills.
So pag kunwari, pagdating sa abnormal psychology, hindi lang pwedeng define lang, recall lang, ganyan. No, umaakyat ka na kasi dapat to mga third year level na to ino-offer. Pwede pa rin mag-define, 'di ba? Pero hindi doon lang naka-focus yung outcomes na hinahanap natin.
And as you can see here, mas mapipicture out mo kung ano yung mga activities na kailangan mong gawin to translate this into something that is that can be measured. Diba? So, kung understand, di magbigay ka ng, to define, magbigay ka ng multiple choice or whatever, no? Pero pag analyze na, ibang klaseng tool na yung gagamitin mo or rubrics na yung gagamitin mo.
Or iba yung paraan kung paano mo sinistate yung mga questions. So, kunwari, ang definition, learning according to Sandrock is defined as ganyan.
Exactly.
Ganyan. Yun yung lots. Pero kapag sinabi mong, ano ba? Pag sinabi mong Jessica is a 4-year-old kid,
experiencing blah, blah, blah. And if you are to teach Jessica, how to ride a bike, how you are going to apply classic operant conditioning. The process of operant conditioning or reinforcement, ganon.
Correct.
So, yes.
Multiple choice pa rin siya, pero yung analysis part na kasi siya.
Yes.
Hindi pa merely identifying what is happening or recalling terms na nakalagay doon. Yun yung ini-emphasize natin. Okay.
So, and an example will be in the next slide, no?
Yan. Okay.
Ayan. So, for example, yung topic mo for that particular week is classical conditioning or operant conditioning, no? And you've set these learning outcomes. For example, describe the process and components of conditioning or apply classical and operant conditioning through simulated experiments. So, here makikita natin yung pag-graduate or pag-increase ng level of learning outcomes as the course goes along, no? So, you can lay it out like this as your learning plan, whether it's asynchronous activities or whether it's synchronous, no? So, makikita natin that in these learning outcomes, you can actually translate it into activities given the resources and given the particular rubrics or assessment tool that you're going to have, no? So, it's easier for us to actually design our lesson plan or learning plan if we have very clear learning outcomes that were stated specifically for a particular topic or unit in your course. Ayan. So, in the next slide, makikita natin yung example naman kung paano natin i-measure or ano yung rubric na gagamitin. This is an example of a component points rubric. You can use this, for example, if you have an infographic output and you're going to have set criteria. This is, the teachers find it easier and faster to create, no? Because they no longer have to spend very long time coming up with different ways so students could actually meet the expectations, no? And students are very clear and it's easier for them to understand ano dapat yung mga areas ng ganitong output ko ang kailangan kong i-strengthen, no? So, makikita natin yung score sa first column and then the criteria, which becomes a very salient reference point, no? Kailangan nasa center yan para hindi maglo-lost ang inyong estudyante. Whether this can be done in online as well. So, what is important as well, I would like to remind teachers, mga teachers natin, no, na you need to be very transparent with how you are going to assess your students. Kasi I think our previous speakers or resource persons have emphasized how important feedback is. And this is one example of a feedback, no, for the students. And magiging conscious yung estudyante on which areas ang kailangan niya i-increase or i-improve, and so on and so forth. In the next slide, we have another example. I think, yes. Ayan. Ito naman ay scalar. Kung mahilig kayo sa Likert scale and you're the type to have set up these things, no? In essence, ganun pa rin, no? For example, your requirement for a particular unit or topic is critical review of literature. That's a paper. So, ang hirap kasi siyang i-measure kung hindi kayo mag-create ng rubrics. For example, you need to set up certain criterion for particular part of the requirement, no? And grade it or assess it based on your Likert scale, whether ano ba siya, ng standard, particularly met or not particularly met, no? So it gives you room to assess and figure out what the kind of quality output your student is generating, no? And here you also, the student will be able to get very good feedback. Hindi lang na meron tayong mga during our face-to-face experience in the classroom, no? When we return papers, we encircle the wrong part of the essay, but we don't put why we encircled it, no? It's just mali siya, pero ang estudyante, bakit? Ano to? Bakit may circle to, no? Sometimes because of our, force of habit sometimes, no? Sa tagal na natin ginagawa to, sometimes we feel na hindi na kailangan. Just circle it and the student will figure it out. But this is especially very important in online platforms or online interactions because yun nga, hindi kayo nakikita ng estudyante mo. So, this is a very good tool that you can use for assessment or creating rubrics, no? Ayan. So, I think when I mentioned in the next slide, I think our previous speakers mentioned this, no? Yung summative assessments, we like to use this because I think na-mention ni Miss Pat last time na we like to shock and awe our students. But in online platforms or in our remote learning and teaching environment, kailangan natin mag-create ng formative ways of assessing students, no? Kasi pag formative assessment for learning, pero pag summative, assessment of learning. So hindi naman pwedeng one time, big time lang nating i-measure yung or i-assess ang outcomes ng estudyante, but we need to work with the student. We need to facilitate the learning of the student. So hindi pwedeng bigay lang tayo ng bigay ng requirements without making sure that the kind of products that they produce with those requirements are at par with the standards that you've set based on your learning outcomes. So here are some examples that you might want to use, no? Yung difference ng formative assessment versus that of summative assessment. So, sa summative examples, makikita natin yung mga culminating activity, yung mga portfolio, pero hindi naman pwedeng yun lang ang ibibigay mo. You have to have journal writing, exit slips, or guide anecdotal notes, depende kung ano yung nare-require ng iyong learning outcome in the context of your course or subject. Yan. In the next slide, here are also some
Bakit naka-asterisk yung quiz, Monique? Baka magtanong
okay.
sila.
Sa quiz.
Oo.
Kasi pwede siyang, ano tawag nito, in a modified form, like gamified quizzes or flashcards. Hindi kailangang yung typical or traditional nating quizzes, no? So yung quizzes are very small measures, no, na hindi mahihirapan ang estudyante to engage in, especially ngayon na online or remote learning, no? So you can actually modify or innovate the kind of quiz that you're going to produce sa mga students or give sa mga students. Ayan.
Okay.
In the next slide, here are more examples actually of how you're going to be guided with creating your or crafting your learning outcomes. Tanungin niyo ang sarili niyo, no? When you're using this word, application, gusto kong i-apply ng mga estudyante ang ganitong concept. So, can the student use information in a new way? Is always a good example of how application may be translated into a particular course requirement or a lesson requirement, no? So, in terms of application, makikita mo yung mga terms na pwede mong gamitin or verbs na pwede mong gamitin: demonstrate, dramatize, employ, illustrate, interpret, operate, sketch, solve, use, write, no? So, these are helpful tools. These are extended or modified Bloom's taxonomy na rubrics, no, that could help teachers craft their learning outcomes when they prepare for their lessons. Ayan. And in the next slide, there are more examples, no? Mahilig tayo mag-isip, okay, eto yung verbs, pero paano natin i-translate? Here are some good examples, no? If you want to measure, if your learning outcomes, for example, looks at application, ano yung pwedeng mong ipaproduce or requirement for your student to generate the learning outcome of application? So you can have photograph, illustration, a puzzle, cartoon, a film strip. So again, this is a very good guide, no, for teachers, especially now that we're looking at that from an online platform, particularly using synchronous or asynchronous lessons, no, or delivery of our lessons. Ayan. So teachers should select the teaching strategy and learning activity that is most likely to assist students to achieve the particular competencies that they need. In the next slide, ayan, more examples. Ito yung tanong mo kanina, Ver. How can you tell if a student really gets it? Paano mo malalaman, paano mo ma-determine if a student really understood you or understood the lesson, no? So this is a good guide as well. You can get it from teachthought.com. It can be used to guide planning, assessment, curriculum design, and self-directed learning. So these are critical thinking questions for any content area. If you want to look at, for example, gusto mong malaman if nakukuha talaga ng estudyante yung essence ng course or na-learn ba talaga nila yung content ng course mo, then you'd like, say, for example, abstraction. We always use this, no? Have them abstract the concept insightfully or artfully, for example, demonstrate, no, in essence yung concept. And these are very good tools that will guide you how you will be able to measure or to determine if naiintindihan ba talaga nila yung topic na or lesson na binigay mo for that week, no? So it's good to have a variation or a variety of these tools that you can use in your structured learning activities. In the next slide are further examples of
wait lang, Moniq, kunwari yung abstraction. So, bigyan natin sila ng mas specific pa na concept. So, kunwari, mamili ka, anong gusto mo siya?
Abstraction, I like, for example, na-explain ko na, for example, yung iba-ibang perspectives of psychology. Diba?
Sige.
So, I want to determine whether my student really understood the difference or the nuances of each perspective. So I'm going to use abstraction. So I'll ask them, okay, if you look at the psychodynamic perspective, what would be the three major criticisms of that particular perspective? And if these are the criticisms, who would be most likely from all the other perspectives give those criticisms? So makikita mo, mag-iisip talaga yung estudyante na hindi lang sila magme-memorize kung ano yung psychodynamic perspective, but they really have to look at the gaps of the theory. They have to look at the strengths of the theory. They have to look at it from the application aspect of the theory. So this actually covers a lot of levels of learning from the student.
So, itong pie na to na nakikita natin, ano siya? Pataas ba siya? Or parang medyo equal yung parts niya? So, I could focus on self? Or ano ba yung...
that would be really depend on the topic you're going to teach, no? Or the lesson. And it can be used in combination. That you can combine these elements when you craft, for example, an essay question, an exam, a summative assessment, or a ang tawag nito, yung culminating activity. So pag culminating activity, that, for example, I want to get about 4 of these elements.
Right.
So that to measure if the student really got it. If the student really learned anything from abnormal psychology. So you can use any combination of this.
So ito, as a whole, they get it. Tama ba?
Yes,
So
yes.
kung part lang, kunwari may nakikita tayo dito, parts. Part lang yung na-gets niya, pero hindi
Yes.
masyadong na-gets yung self, hindi niya masyadong yung
Yung
whole.
function, yung whole.
Okay. So, as much as possible, you would like to include all of these. As much as possible. That's the key.
Possible.
Pero hindi na, pero don't focus lang din on the parts. Kasi perhaps, no, I'm thinking, kung function kasi, then I would be able to know then the parts. Kahit pa paano, no? So, parang, again,
that's why it's in circular. Hindi siya, sino ang mas malamang sa isa? Because you actually use them in combination with each other.
Okay, sige. Thank you, Moniq. Okay.
So in the next slide are examples that can be used online as your individual or group-based activities that could actually assess your learning outcomes. So if you've set your learning outcomes, these are some activities. First one is yung tiering objectives. Dito, hindi mo, for example, we know that there are students na medyo slow ang pace of learning. You can have a separate set of learning objectives for them so that hindi sila mahihirapan. It's basically operating on scaffolding. For example, sa tier 1, kailangan mo eto munang ma-achieve niya for this week. In tier 2, eto naman yung kailangan niyang ma-develop or define and distinguish na. And sa third tier, pwede na siyang kailangan niya ma-explain. And by the fourth tier, kailangan niyang ma-analyze. So, dito makikita mo yung full evolution ng learning ng isang estudyante for that particular lesson, no? Also, some educators would recommend yung KWL charts. This is just a 3-column chart which you can actually give to your student or have your students fill out. You ask them what they want to know about the subject or the course or the lesson, and what I want to learn and what I learned. No, so this can be actually a good way of tracking a student's progress in the course as they take it, no, or based on the lessons that you give. Yung think, pair, and share. I think we use this, and this is very effective. If ever you have large classes online, you can actually sinasuggest ngayon ng mga educators that if you have big classes online, you have to break them down into smaller groups, no? And it's so difficult to actually manage 30 to 35 students, no, in a class. And it's very effective, and it's also practical for the teacher to break them down into smaller groups, no? And the smallest would be a pair. So give them a topic, and then they can discuss among themselves, and they can share later on in the larger group, no? 4 corners, this is also nice because it gives us you can use discussion boards or what do you call this, yung parang yung post-it, virtual post-it that some of our resource speakers suggested online, no? 4 skill choices. For example, you give them a situation, particularly, for example, in ethics, no? Ethical practices in research, for example, and you have them choose a corner, whether they agree, they disagree, strongly disagree, or strongly agree, no? So and then as they group themselves in those corners, they can discuss why they made that choice, no? So again, here you're showing students how they will be able to learn among themselves, no? With your guidance and your facilitation. Yung jigsaw, I think this is suggested this is used in high school level or elementary level classrooms, no? If you click one more, here's the example. Yung jigsaw is when you ask your student to group as expert groups or focus groups, Like say, for example, yung group 1 will discuss about, let's say, personality disorders, and then group 2 will discuss and talk about, let's say, schizophrenic disorders, or the group 3 will talk about this set of disorders, and the group 4. And then after some time, like say give them a week, they can discuss and give, of course, you give them guide questions on how to do it. You return synchronously, and then have them break out into task groups. And you can see here, when they break out into task groups, they can actually have representatives from every group or every focus group, and they can discuss and share amongst themselves. So the personality disorder expert will talk with the schizophrenic disorder expert, and so on and so forth. So here it maximizes your time, it maximizes your resources when you are facilitating group activities, especially if you have a very, very long coverage of your content, no, in a particular course. In the next slide, we have more examples, no. Here are is an introduction post. This is usually given in a class, no? An introduction post will contain, let's say, a student will be able to post something about himself or herself, given that you're guiding them based on their knowledge about psychology, the skill about their skills, their hobbies, and so on and so forth. So it gives you an idea of where you will be springboarding from, based on the profile of your students given the introduction post activity. Yung syllabus quiz is a good way to gauge if your students really read the syllabus. It can be in a form of a game, or it can be in a form of an interactive quiz, no? So most educators would say na after you give the syllabus, hindi na nila binabasa. So this is a good way to actually have them remember what are the elements or the content of your course, what are the specific important details of your course, no, based on your syllabus. The third slide is media products. We love to say that, sige, pagawa natin sila ng video, di ba? Yun yung pinaka-common nating suggestion as a structured learning activity or output for our students. But we have to ask ourselves, para sa ano ba yung video? Ano ba yung gustong ng video ma-achieve for the student, no? That is why it's not only just about the video, but how you process the product, particularly that video, no? So if you're going to look at, okay, mag-produce kayo ng, let's say, a short documentary or whatever, there has to be processing or guide questions para mag-guide yung estudyante, why malaman ng estudyante or maintindihan ng estudyante bakit niya ginagawa to. It's not just a requirement, no? It is something that the student needs to learn and to produce, because the course outcomes directs us towards that, no? So our culminating activities or culminating products would usually be yung media products, okay, mag-TikTok ka or whatever, but it's not just about that product. It's about why you're asking students to produce that, no? 3-to-1, I usually give this after I let's say, for example, this can be worked with if you're giving, okay, you watch this TED Talk about, let's say, motivation. So, kasi because you have found a very good video, TED Talk speaker online, so you're going to have them watch it. But after that, kailangan mo siyang i-process. So, for example, give 3 things you learned from the speaker, 2 examples that can be drawn from your learning, and 1 critical question if you're going to ask the speaker that question. Okay? So, again, it produces a lot of analytical skills and competencies, no? Hindi lang sila manonood sila simply because you want them to watch the video. 5x5. I like this because it makes it very efficient. When we ask our students to report in class, they would maximize all the 1 hour and a half. And it's really ridiculous if you have several groups waiting in line to present or report, no? So I always say 5 by 5, 5 minutes, 5 slides. So in 5 slides, you have to present to me your topic. So it has to be very insightful, it has to be very concise, and it has to be very meaningful, so that in 5 slides, you can capture what it is that your classmates need to learn from you, no? And yung think tacto, this is an example. So if you want a think tacto activity, you can actually use the one in the left, no? A grid. It's parang tic-tac-toe. So have your students choose. Ito yung lesson, and these are the set of activities. For example, gusto kong i-complete na tic-tac-toe is yung straight, vertical left, yung far left or far column, farthest column, yung left column. So, kailangan ng estudyante mag-collect, mag-photograph, mag-dramatize, at mag-create. So here, you're already maximizing the assessment of your learning outcomes, and you're hitting several birds with one stone, kumbaga, no? So this again is a very good tool that you can use, especially in culminating activities or final course outputs. Okay? Yan. And in the next slide, okay, don't forget yung 4 Ps. Hindi yung 4 Ps ng DSWD, but 4 Ps, yung points to ponder in planning and preparing. So after this webisode, if you've not already started with planning your lessons for the semester, for the year, this can be a good guide, no? You need to use the levers. These 3 levers to combine to adjust what kind of student task you need to provide your students. So, task structures, help, resources, and choices offered. So, kailangan may elements na ganito for making sure that you maximize engagement with your students. And this is, I think, is very important. It was reminded to us by Miss Pat yesterday, no? The other day, na kailangan nating to provide a clear instruction, very direct, clear instruction of why or what they need to do and why they need to do it. And secondly, ano yung mga resources nila? So from your end, are you willing to provide those resources given these are your set of requirements? And then what are the choices offered? Is it an assigned topic ba, or are you giving them a set of choices based on your syllabus? So these are the levers that you can use to gear yourselves in planning out your lessons or your learning plan. And in the next slide, it's nice also to begin your class with a paradox. There's nothing more beautiful than making your students think a lot. So try to start classes and lessons with a thought-provoking question or paradox or puzzle, or that allows them to weave the lesson, make sense of the lesson as they try to answer that question through that particular topic or unit, no? Secondly, you have to maximize learning outcomes to achieve optimal competencies. And when you say learning outcomes, it should encompass several competencies. My intellectual and practical skills, are they critical and creative thinking skills, information literacy. A lot of our students now are bombarded with a lot of information, but they don't know how to be critical about the kind of information that they get, no? To use as an answer to your requirement or as a submission to your requirement. Thirdly, instilling personal and social responsibility. I think this is very important at this point because our lessons still need to be anchored on the current social issues. Whether you're teaching psychological statistics, theories of personality, general psychology, they have to be conscious and mindful of what's going on in the rest of the world. No, they cannot anymore go out, physically go out or be interactive most of the time. So we have to instill some sense of social responsibility, and this is where you go back to your learning outcomes, making them understand and appreciate why they need to have these competencies and skills. Bakit ba kailangan kong mag-learn? Kailangan ko bang bakit kailangan ko bang intindihin or i-apply ang correlation? No, I mean it's a very simple question, but it makes us think na kailangan ba talaga to ng estudyante? Yes, kasi psych student siya. Pero yung pagsagot mo ay kasi kailangan niyang pumasa ng board exam. Hindi naman yun yung end all and be all. Because at the end of the day, your graduates are not there to pass the board exams, but they are there to be effective and good citizens of our country. You can contribute to education, to various fields, no, in psychology. And in the next slide, I would suggest when you begin your classes, first meeting, create a class or digital status access profile. You need to know yung kanilang accessibility ng internet. So who has a laptop, who is using only a tablet, or who has data, is data dependent, or who has unlimited internet access, yung mga ganon. And then I think you need to create parang a profile of your students just to guide you on the kind of activities that you are going to give. Kasi hindi pwedeng, you need also to balance out the synchronous and asynchronous approaches that you're going to have. And this will be very determinant on how you profile your class. Set up different learning pathways. I think the previous resource speakers have emphasized this enough, no? Na if you are going to maximize various learning platforms or learning management systems, have them, if hindi to mag-work, how will it be translated to let's say asynchronous or asynchronous learning modality, no? And then most of us would take it for granted na hindi natin ina-anticipate, wala tayong plan B. Eto na yan, eto yung requirements. But what if, ma'am, hindi ko kaya kasi sa ganitong time may brown out ako, or wala, yung laptop ko ginagamit ng sister ko, so we're just sharing a laptop. So we have to anticipate problems like this. So if you have set requirements, make sure you have like buffer requirements or buffer submission deadlines, no, to give time for your students and also have room for your students to work around in. And then you suggested kanina yung summative assessment, not the formative, necessarily the formative assessment, but the summative assessment needs to be creative and HOTS. It should focus on creation and higher order thinking skills. And at the end of the day, kailangan ng teachers to be very good decision makers. You have to choose wisely. Ano ba ang kailangan kong non-negotiables, no, in terms of content? Because true to form, we cannot cover everything in a span of 9 weeks. So you need to be very smart and
understand and anticipate ano ba yung mga dapat lang natin ituro. If you notice in our previous webisodes, yun yung lagi nating tinitignan, no? Yun yung parang ano yung non-negotiables. Kasi kapag hindi natin tinignan, ano ba yung mga dapat lang nating ituro or yung essential na dapat nating ituro, nagkakaroon tayo ng magulo, no? Nagiging magulo. Now, I was just telling them, Moniq, na kaya yung mga previous webisodes natin, lagi nating tinatanong, ano yung top 5 topics, no? Top modules na non-negotiable. Kasi yun ang hindi talaga pwedeng mawala. Na kailangan, iba pwede mo nang i-let go. Pero kung, giping ka na, ito yung default na kailangan.
And in the next slide, so that you won't get lost in translation from this point forward, when you plan your course, you need to follow these processes, no? You articulate your course aims. Ano yung course outcomes mo? And you articulate or translate your course outcomes into learning outcomes. And when you say learning outcomes, this is very topical or unit-based, no? So, di ba yung course mo ay merong unit 1 or topic 1. So, per topic, talaga kailangan ka may learning outcomes ka. This is again for your benefit. Kasi pag hindi maganda or hindi well-crafted ang iyong learning outcomes, mahihirapan kang mag-measure or mag-assess later on. So that's why your assessment is very crucial, because the kind of activities you are going to have your students go through will also be determinant of the kind of assessment tools that you're going to use. Yan. And in the next slide, I guess I'm just going to give you some sources, teaching resources for your instructional strategies, how to be more outcome-based in the way of your managing or framing your lessons. These are the websites that you can look into. They're very extensive, and you can also go to apa.org. They have a very good they have good articles on suggested tips for teaching and learning. No, and here are some things that would like to remind our teachers. No. For example, you were looking at schedule, announcements, syllabus, modules, assignments, discussion boards, private messages, chats, tests, and quizzes. These are the, what do you call this? The way to do it, or the approach. Pag mag-schedule, if you're trying to set a schedule, it has to be in the context of, it has to be posted, and it has to be viewed, and it has to be based on what particular activity or event it is for. Syllabus. This is giving them the syllabus or a copy of the syllabus or your course outline allows for the student to understand. It's like a map, kumbaga, no? It's a map for your students to be guided. Saan na ba tayo? Ano bang kailangan kong i-scaffold or i-learn more kasi hindi ako good at, let's say, inferential statistics. So, ina-anticipate ko na meron na ganitong may ganito ng topic in the future, two weeks from now. So, I can tell my teacher, ma'am, sir, I need more resources because I don't think based on the ones that you've given ahead of time, hindi ko kaya. So, this is a good way for your students to give you feedback as well. Yan. Okay, and the last slide. Oh, second to the last. Again, I think this one is presented already by, if I'm not mistaken, Sir Mark, when he presented abnormal psychology, he, I think, briefly touched on this. Be reminded that your activities or your structured learning activities should be in consideration of whether it's high bandwidth versus low bandwidth students versus whether those activities they need to be done immediately versus you can actually give them time to produce the outputs for those activities. And when you take into consideration this grid, you can actually plan your activities and plot your activities throughout the 9 weeks or 10 weeks or for how long you're going to have your semester. You're going to plot it more effectively for you as a teacher and for them as students who are at the receiving end of this, who have these specific realities in terms of internet connection and accessibility. Ayan. And okay, here are more resources. You can just have a screenshot of this. These are books that you can, some of them it's downloadable, some of them are in outline form, but if you have access, if you can have access to them, these can be very good reads, resources for you to, be reminded that once in a while, kahit online tayo, there are still many things that we need not change as our teaching strategies or as our teaching approaches. No, hindi porket online, we have to radically change everything. Even now na online tayo, kailangan natin also i-emphasize yung OBE. No, even nag face-to-face tayo, OBE na tayo. So even in remote teaching, we need to appreciate as well what are the ones who are exemplars of our techniques, of our skill as teachers. Ayan. So thank you.
Yay! Thank you, Moniq. Again, siguro just to emphasize lang, no, na some of these things take time. Hindi naman natin ini-expect na perfect kayo pagkatapos.
Yeah. Yes.
Na lahat yan nagawa ninyo. It takes time, it takes practice. And what is important is that we continuously learn. No? So, for sure, may mga iba dyan, Moniq, na parang ang hirap naman mag-OBE. In fact, i-tweak lang naman yung ibang parts.
Yes.
Oo. So, it is a difficulty of a paradigm shift of changing how we do things. Now, especially because it's from face-to-face to a more, anong tawag dito, virtual world. But basically, yung mga ibang mga suggestions are things that we actually do. It's just that we need to recalibrate them to make it more palatable in this particular scenario or situation that we have.
And I guess using the OBE framework actually hindi natin dapat i-shortchange ang mga estudyante dahil remote learning na, no? We still have an obligation as teachers and as public servants that these students are the products of our program, and they are exemplars, or they are a good representation of the quality of degree programs that you have in your school. So it really goes down to kahit anong kaganda ang iyong bonggang-bonggang iyong PowerPoint presentation, if it does not come across, if it does not generate the right competencies for a psych graduate, then it doesn't work.
That's right. Ayan. Maraming salamat again, Monique. Oy, nag-message sa atin si Miss Pat, yung ating, sabi niya, I enjoyed your presentation. I learned a lot. Thank you. Ayan.
Yes.
Tapos sabi ni Nico, very informative. Thank you po. Ayan. At sinabi din ni JZ Herrera, thank you, PAP Teaching Psychology SIG, and all the webisode resource speakers. All the best and God bless.
Thank
Ayan,
you.
maraming salamat. Sabi ni Junix are also our one of the speakers. Sabi niya, super insightful, great way to cap off season 2. Yan.
Thank you, Junix.
Maraming salamat. And, syempre, yung iyong na-pressure ka sa kanya. President, comprehensive. Thank you, Monique. Maraming salamat.
Thank you po, Doc Marge.
And so sana I'm pretty sure marami silang natutunan. Wala na tayong masyadong questions dito. Again, this is replayed naman. So just in case you want to learn more about the topics, you can go back, replay, share to your friends as well into your group. You can do the screen shots. We're not very particular about that. But yeah, so if you want to learn more, or if you have some clarifications, Monique will try to answer them as well as we can. Both again on our social, on Facebook and on our YouTube. Wala na tayo masyadong ipopromote, Monique.
Wala na tayo ipopromote kasi this is our last webisode, and it's been a pleasure doing this with you, Madam Ver. Because it makes working from home more productive, I guess. Para sa bayan.
Para sa bayan. Para teachers ng psychology. No?
Yeah, oo. Kasi we're all in this together, aren't we?
And because you guys are always saying thank you, we would also like to thank you.
Yes, true.
For motivating us to do best in our job as chair and co-chair. You inspire us to give you and deliver services, no, to reach you to wherever you are. I think yun yung isa sa mga problems natin, Monique, no, reaching out to our members, because before physically, nahihirapan talaga tayo.
Nagre-reunion tayo before, di ba? Every PAP. Ngayon, wala. So this is our way of reaching out to you, and also you reaching out to us. And we are very happy that we can actually help each other, no, as teachers of psychology. Because I know this is not an easy time for all of us as teachers of psychology, given the situation that we're in, no. But it's nice to have somebody with us, no, or a group of people who can actually be sharing a lot of things to help our teaching psychology better.
That's right. So this is not goodbye. We still hope that we will see all of you in the next magkakaroon lang tayo ng season hiatus. Series hiatus muna.
Oo, para sa award season naman.
Tony, at saka,
Ayan.
Golden Globe, mga ganyan.
Yan,
But
oo.
seriously, we will be taking a break. We hope that the webisodes will give you enough resources to help you out for this time. Kasi ayaw din naman namin maka-istorbo sa inyo dahil August is tomorrow.
Tomorrow na. And I'm sure they're starting to work on their learning plans and their courses. And don't hesitate to go back to our previous webisodes so that in case you want more insights and examples, please do share it with your friends as well and your colleagues who are also teaching psychology.
Right. And as much as possible, we will be trying to keep in touch. We will be posting some videos, some announcements. So don't forget to subscribe, like, and reach out to us through our social media platforms. Again, on email, we have teachpsych.pap.sig@gmail.com. And we also have on our Facebook, of course, Twitter, and on Instagram at TeachPsychPAP. And of course, on YouTube at Teaching Psychology SIG TV. Again, maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. Stay safe, everyone.
Yes.
And Moniq and I are very happy to have served you for the past how many years. And we hope that we will be seeing you soon. Salamat. And we hope to see you again only here on Teaching Psychology
SIG TV.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Take care. Stay safe.